Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The show is about to begin.
Welcome to the podcast, concerts that made us, interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down, the greatest live shows and that cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concertsthatmadeus.com.
Hey, this is Cam Fraser from Boulder Fields, and you're listening to Concerts That Made Us.
Horse in the sling, lifted up high, then down to a dark and frightening hold, where no horse on earth, no matter how bold, would ever want to get in. Look at you now, bound for this fate. What are you thinking? You are the getaway king. You were almost gone, and then it all went wrong. Yeah, it all went wrong. Yeah, it all went wrong. And is there a ghost of us all that can go anywhere, that can be anything, or just lie down with all the other ghosts? Horse in the sling, gotta get out of here. Are you still thinking? As you swing overhead, if your hoofs hit that deck, you can get away yet. You can still get away. You can still get away. Can still get away. And if your hoofs hit that deck, you can get away yet. Jump overboard, swim for the shore, swim for the shore, and you can still get away. 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 And there's a ghost of us all that can go anywhere, that can be anything, or just lie down with all the other ghosts.
Cam Fraser, you're very welcome to Concerts That Made Us.
Thank you. I'm honoured and delighted to be here on what is a really horrible day in Edinburgh.
Well, it's not much better here in Ireland, I'm afraid. We had the tail end of a hurricane, so last night was fairly rough, and it's not much better this morning.
Yeah, it's pretty much like here. I know it was pretty windy last night. It's pretty windy this morning, and I think it's going to stay pretty windy today. And then tomorrow it's going to rain. So
Yeah, Irish and Scottish weather, huh?
the height of summer.
Yeah, exactly. Now, let's get down to business. You recently released your debut album with Boulder Fields with All the Other Ghosts. Can you take us deeper into it if you can?
Yeah, I mean, my it was like a lot of things. It kind of came out of lockdown. I went into lockdown being a guy that had only ever really played in kind of rock bands, essentially in kind of punk and grunge bands, and I'd been back. I'd been out for a little while, still playing music, but not actually doing anything. Then into lockdown, obviously, it was impossible to kind of meet up with bandmates or anything, and I was kind of bored and just thinking I need to do something. And I thought, well, I've never really played much acoustic guitar, and so I picked up an acoustic guitar and started playing, and then started writing songs, and then realizing that some songs that I'd had that were kind of aimed to be played with a rock band actually was kind of fun to take them apart and play them on my own, really. And that's kind of where the Boulder Fields thing came from. There's also a realization is that as you get to a certain age, you start to realize that getting bands out and gigging becomes harder and harder. Whereas if you're just picking up an acoustic guitar and heading out, that's a lot easier. So partly it was an urge that after lockdown I wanted to be able to get back gigging again, and it felt like having something that kind of indicated the sort of thing that Boulder Fields was at that point was what it was. So that was the point of the album. I didn't have any great plans for it. It was essentially an advert for trying to get out and play these songs live. So to that end, I wanted it to be as stripped down and as like the band as it was possible. And the Boulder Fields band is very definitely a collective of friends and people who are around to play, and it's deliberately loose, and all the better for that. I think it's been a really nice thing to be doing.
Sounds it. It sounds it. You spent a bit of time away from music. You were producing animation. What was it like to kind of transition back into music?
Actually, great. It was really great. I had really nice times in animation, and we had and I'd say I had a lot of success. I mean, we won a lot of awards for the stuff that we made, and in fact, the only times I've been to Ireland was to nominated for awards for the Celtic Film Festival and stuff like that. I think down at Galway, and then there was another one in Dublin. So the animation side went really well. It was like far more successful than the music. But actually, music was always the thing that I loved most. I'd been playing in bands since I was a teenager, and I only ended up in animation because I'd been a songwriter, and and what happened was I kind of burned out on the music side, and I really did burn out. And I had a young family then, and I kind of thought, I need to do something that's a bit more sensible. And kind of screenwriting and songwriting are not as far apart as people would think. It was, and being in the music business for 10 years was a really good kind of opening into the world of animation, because ultimately it's about trying to be in groups of creative people, trying to get everybody to do their best. It's the same, it's the same job, really. So they kind of merged really from music into animation, and then from animation back out into music. But in music, particularly working how I work now, there's no development executives, there's no broadcasters, there's no pardon me for saying, there's no arsehole accountants You know, although I was lucky. I had a very friendly, funny accountant when I was in animation who used to take me out and get me very drunk quite regularly, which was unusual in the world of accountancy.
Yeah.
But you know, all of the kind of business part that goes along with film and television world is, I found, tiresome. And I got to work with some lovely people and had a really great time. But it's been really nice to get back doing what I really love doing most, which is playing music with other people, really, and playing for people. So.
I could imagine. I could imagine. On the record, you collaborated with Aly Barr, Suzy Cargill, and
Yep.
Jamie Watson. Can you tell us a bit about the collaboration between you guys?
Well, Aly, kind of like me, kind of came out of playing kind of hardcore punk, and he's a fantastic musician. He can play pretty much anything, really. He's just one of these guys that's just really fun to work with, and so we've played together for a long time. I was playing with Aly back when I was at a full-time job making animation and stuff like that, and we just go to rehearsal rooms and turn everything up loud and just play music for the sake of it. I think at that point, Aly probably wondered if I was ever going to get my act together to actually get into recording studios and do all that stuff. But he's stuck with it. So he's just like a really old friend, really. We played a lot together. Suzy, I've not been playing with as long, and she's a remarkable musician. She trained as a classical percussionist and was a percussionist around the world. She's just naturally musical. She plays mandolin and she plays all sorts of different instruments. Suzy also has a kind of Suzy had spina bifida when later in life, and so she has a lot of time she has to use a wheelchair or kind of walking aids. And getting access to venues and stuff is a massive problem for Suzy. It's surprising how in this day and age, so many venues just can't, allow musicians with a disability or a walking impairment into the building. So lots of stuff that we, there's stuff that we, that is difficult for us to do. But Suzy's just such a magical person. I've seen Suzy physically crawling onto stages to get up and to play music.
Oh my God!
Where facilities just aren't there, and I mean she loves playing music, and she's in so many bands and so highly regarded as a musician. That I'm just lucky that she's able to fit in playing with me. But it's just a pleasure. It's a pleasure to play with Suzy. She's a girl that likes a pint of Tennent's lager or two, and she's the best of fun, really, to be out gigging with. So,
oh my God!
I've not mentioned Jamie, who was a kind of a late addition to in the true collective nature of Boulder Fields. Jamie was a really old friend who lived kind of about halfway between me and the studio. So. I'd actually started the album, and I bumped into Jamie, and I knew that he was he's a very good fingerstyle guitarist. He was a really well known producer. He produced the first Snow Patrol album. He produced the Vaseline's singles, and and loads of stuff. I think he worked with the Average White Band and stuff. He did loads of Scottish kind of indie music over a very long period of time. But he'd sold the studio and had taken up, gone back to playing a bit like me. He'd gone back to playing a lot more guitar. So I kind of dragged him into it, kind of when the process was actually up and running. But he was game, and he kind of worked really hard at working out his guitar parts, and his contribution ended up just being massive and quite a bit random, but he's done some of the nicest stuff on the record. So hooray!
Man, Man, were there any challenges or say memorable moments during recording and production?
No, no, not really. It was it's a very small studio in a basement, and in Edinburgh, just off Leith Walk in the middle of Edinburgh, and it's run by Richie Warner, who is just he's renowned in these parts for having really good ears for acoustic instruments, and that's why I thought like I'd give it a try. And I must admit, when I went along there, I was thinking I'd be meeting a kind of gnarled old folky with beard down to his knees and finger in one ear sort of thing. And I went there, and this sort of youngish guy. We started chatting, and I was feeling a bit self-conscious because I come from a sort of punk rock grunge type world, and I kind of thought I'm going to be really out of place here, and it immediately made me feel really relaxed. And we got down to talking music, and I said Richie, what's your favorite band? No hesitation, Therapy. So I thought, yeah, okay, we're the same place here, and it was, and he just made. He builds a lot of stuff in the studio himself. He builds a lot of microphones and some very impressive compressors and stuff like that. So he's a real tech guy, and it was great. It was probably one of the easiest recordings I've ever done. I've been going in and out of recording studios for a lot of years, but this was a session that just kind of made itself really. Got us all sitting in the room. We were relaxed about performance. We were relaxed if things felt right, if it wasn't perfect, but it felt right, it felt honest. That was the take that we went with. We didn't fret too much about chasing things being just so. It just wanted it to be just real, not just so.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds like the perfect way to do it. You'll have to keep aiming to do it like that in future.
Absolutely, it's just I understand how quantizing works. I understand, I've in times past I've played along to click tracks and all of that stuff, and taken fretted and worried over every kind of single thing that happens. And that was my life in animation. In animation, every single thing has to be created. Nothing that you see is natural in it. Everything has to be built and made, and everything has to be sweated over all the way. But this just felt much more, it's a cliched word to use, but organic, and it just really did. It just felt like us, playing music together, and capturing it as simply and as kind of straightforwardly as we can, really.
Are there any specific tracks on the record that hold maybe a special meaning to you?
I'm not being glib about it, but they all do. They all, quite a lot of them probably sound a bit like love songs when you listen to them, but they're usually not. They usually have darker undercurrents, and your Horse in a Sling is a song that seems lots of people have picked out, and it is about I've said before, I've seen a picture somewhere of a hot, and I think it was like from the beginning of somewhere end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, early days of photography or whatever, and this really grungy photo of a pack horse being lowered into the hold of a ship, and I think it was heading off to somewhere, some foreign war or something, and it looked so kind of sad and helpless, dangling up there in the air, and you knew that it was heading, it was going to be bad enough to be trapped in the hold of an old cargo ship, but then whenever it got to, if it made it to wherever it was going to be, you knew that it was probably going to be even worse for it then. So it was a very poignant picture, and it stuck with me for a long time. And somebody very close to me found themselves in an awful lot of strife and I was reminded of that photograph, and how, you know, it doesn't matter how bad things are, you know, there should you always have to cling on to, you know, a bit of hope that life is funny. Even at the darkest of times, things can just sort of turn around, and an opportunity can open up, and if it does, you just have to be ready to take it and get on. And that person didn't actually make it long enough to hear the album, or me play them the song. So I guess that one kind of tends to hit home when I play it. But they all do. They're all, you know, everything. It's probably that Celtic element of it, that there's something about that quality of aching and longing and missing, and it's always kind of it's always resonated with me. You know, I'm not a great one for sort of for cheerful love stories. It's the backwash of life's decisions that kind of interest me most, really, and that tends to be where I write the songs. So yeah.
I get you. I get you. I have to mention the video for that track. The location is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. You have to tell us more about it.
Well, it is. It was shot at a friend's house in the shadow of Glencoe, which is a famous mountain range on the west of Scotland. It's really, on the few nice days, it can be beautiful, but it's usually really grey and dark and ominous. It rains a lot. You know, the west coast of Scotland and Ireland, I think, both rain a lot.
Yeah.
And it was on a particularly foul February day, and I was just sitting in the window, and yeah, it's an absolutely beautiful part of the world. If you're ever up there, take a trip along to see Harriet and Alistair and House of the Wood. They've got a fantastic house there, and they do holiday lets, and the nicest people, really old friends. And I've been going up there almost all my adult life. Harriet's mum used to live up there, so it was a place that they were very familiar with. Oh God, it's dark and gloomy on a bad day.
Right.
But dark and gloomy, but also, you know, extremely beautiful.
A good mix. A good mix. Now, I can't move on without mentioning the 80s, the Catteran, the legendary punk band. You're probably sick of people referencing this, but you toured the UK with Nirvana on their first UK tour, and that led to their big break. Can you tell us more about it?
I was kind of oddly involved with that from the very start, because I worked for Rough Trade Records, Rough Trade Distribution at that time, in an office up in Edinburgh. And at one of my jobs, and it was a great job, but one sideline of the job was importing and exporting kind of obscure records. And there's a guy, quite a famous guy now, up in north of Seattle in Washington, a guy called Calvin Johnston, runs a label called K Records. And Calvin's a bit of a kind of indie underground kind of legend, really. And he used to phone me up every now and again, and he would sell me 7-inch singles that were coming out there. Remember, Kenny phoned up one day, and he had the really droll, dark voice. He was all, Cameron, I've got this record here. It's from a local band. It's pretty shit, but I reckon it might be your sort of thing. And I said, okay, Calvin, you've sold me. I'll take 25. And that was the first Nirvana single, the Love Buzz, and he sent over. I had not heard it, but it just, you know, you didn't argue with Calvin. If Calvin thought it was your sort of thing, he knew what he's talking about. I remember we putting on the turntable for the when it arrived in the office, and just thinking, oh wow, that's a great single. And we'd never heard of them, knew nothing about them. They'd never there's nothing at all with it. It's just these singles turned up, and being a bit of a evangelist for that sort of music, I kind of sent it out. I got sent out to various people in the music press as a promo for it, because I thought, well, we'll get some more of these, and if we get some good reviews, it'll sell. And I think I might have sent it to people like Keith Cameron at Sounds, and not everybody. There weren't that many to send out. It was a big promo shift. But one of the ones I sent to was our booking agent at the time, a guy called Russell Warby, who at that point was running his own little agency out of a bedsit in Nottingham, I think. And he only had 2 bands, and I think we were his best ones. So he was very much at the start of his career. And Russell said, "Yeah, this is great, Cam. I'm going to get in touch with the label and see if we can set up a tour for you and them, and we'll that could be cool." And I kind of didn't really think anything else of it, really. But in the intervening time, Rough Trade had also identified that this was a significant single from a significant band, and when that tour, and Russell, pulled it together, which was fantastic on his part. Pulled it together, and by the time the tour came, it was already clear that there was an enormous buzz building for Nirvana. The first gigs were kind of, just kind of like what we were used to. But by the time it came back to SOAS, the London gig, I think people say there was sort of 6,000 people trying to get into a 2,000 head venue, and it did feel like that. It just felt like it was absolutely rammed. There were people hanging off the roof. People actually were, there were so many folk that had gone up the sides of the room, the building, and that was an amazing night, and it kind of all really just kicked off from there. But it was a fun tour. It was kind of just at the time, we just thought they were just another band like us, really. We could see that there was a bit of a buzz building. So I don't remember it particularly. We'd played hundreds of gigs all over UK and Europe by that point. And I don't, at the time, wasn't remembering it as being anything special. It was just fun. We liked Tad, the other band that was playing. But yeah, it changed a lot of things for a lot of people. Russell still is the booking agent for the Foo Fighters, Jack White, Strokes, these folks. So he's done really well, but that's kind of where it all kicked off.
My God. What behind the music? What was Kurt and the guys like to work with on that tour?
Kurt was really quiet, and even at that point, he seemed to be always being, I say this with being the singer from the other band with a slight resentment. He was always being interviewed. Because in the UK, I'm sure it would be the same in Ireland. Whenever American bands come over, it's kind of like and certainly in the 80s, it was news. And so you were kind of conscious that they were getting a lot more attention, but what that meant was that Chris, the bass player, he kind of hung out with us a lot of the time, and he was a really lovely, funny man. And we had some real fun with him. And I think he enjoyed hanging out with us, and we just had a really good time. But Kurt was kind of, he smoked a lot of dope, and he had a lot of kind of stuff to do. He slept a lot, smoked a lot of dope, and then did a lot of interviews, and the rest of us had a really good time.
Right. Interesting, interesting. Now, the podcast is called Concerts That Made Us, so I have to ask you some concert-related questions.
All right,
First off,
good. Okay, good. I've got terrible memory for concerts. It's a miracle that I remember any of the songs I've written. So let's go.
right, this will be fun. So, first off, as a concert goer, what concerts would you say have made you?
That's easy. My top 3 gigs of all time were all The Clash.
Right, right.
I was lucky enough to be at the perfect age for punk rock to start off, and that and it was the kind of 3 chords and the truth. That's all. You just need 3 chords and a guitar, and you can be in a band. And as soon as I got 3 chords, I was in a band. And The Clash were, I loved the Ramones. I loved the Clash, and and seeing the Ramones was just fantastic. But there was something just as a teenager, there was something just incredibly romantic about the Clash. I don't think there's every generation has their heroes, but they were great, kind of just a great heroic band, I think. So yeah, that was fantastic. But I've been lucky enough to spent a long time in music and saw some amazing gigs. I was fortunate enough to literally stumble completely unaware into a gig in Berlin once. I was there for a kind of a work thing, and I was in a bar, and they said, "Oh, there's a gig happening across the road," and I went. Oh, by that time, I'd had enough beers that I'd gone in. If it was Barry Manilow, I'd been in, But I went in, and it was a band that I'd never heard of, and this was before Nirvana, and I hadn't at the time I hadn't realised there's a real connection. There was a Seattle band called Mudhoney, and it was the first appearance in Europe, and the footage just appeared on the internet relatively recently. I think somebody had shot it in 16mm or something. It's like great concert footage, but that seeing Mudhoney in at the Metropole in Berlin was for me kind of life changing. It was like, yeah, my band needs to kick ass and get a bit better because these guys can really do it, and they were amazing. It's footage that's worth hunting out because it's just great, classic kind of real garage rock punk. Yeah, and they're still going and they're still great. So yeah, Mudhoney at the Metropole. That's another one that stands out.
Man,
So yeah,
I know what I'm going to be doing after the show.
you'll enjoy it. And the Catherine were primarily a live band. We when we on that tour with Nirvana, we were just absolutely at ease with the anarchy and madness. I mean, our gigs were based on the principle of how close to the edge of chaos can we balance. And when you have that ethos to playing live, quite often it goes one way or the other, and that's the fun of it. I always thought gigging for us was a bit like surfing. Sometimes you're up, and sometimes you're on top of the wave, and sometimes you're definitely under it. But it kept it exciting, and so we played some amazing live gigs, and the people who do remember the Catherine. That's usually what they remember is just the kind of the sort of energy and chaos that we played. So yeah, I've been very lucky to have lots of memorable gigs. If only I had a good memory to remember
them. Oh man, that's incredible. For any listeners that haven't caught one of Boulder Fields shows, what are they like? Give us the full experience if you can.
They're a lot slower than the Catherine. But the thing that I can't, it'll be me and 1, 2, maybe 3 other musicians, the thing that hasn't changed is the way that I got through, the Caterin was just by being intensely in the music. And even now, I don't think that intensity in the performance part has diminished a bit. I still feel every word. I feel every note. And it's the reason that I do it. I think it's the only reason I do it. Is that it for me? It feels like a really every gig just feels intense. If it's not intense, then I'm doing it wrong. And I'm too old now to do it if it didn't feel right. So it has to feel right, and the only way that it can feel right is if I'm feeling intensely involved in the music and the words and the performance and the relationship with the other people that I'm playing with. So intense would be the word.
I like it.
Intense with some pretty tunes.
What more could you ask for, huh?
That's all I've got. If you ask for more, I'll have to step back. Intense with pretty tunes. That's about it.
Oh man. And before we dive into the last couple of questions, then, future plans, what can you share with us?
Oh, if I get a sniff, I'll be at a venue near you. My plans are to play as much as I can. The opportunities are less. I'm really keen to get back across to playing in Europe. I've set my mind on being back. I directed my first film in Berlin. Our first tour ended up in Berlin. Our first ever tour was in Germany as the Caterin. We had fantastic times in Berlin. I have a real fondness for it, and I'd like to get back there to play some music. I'd like to get back to Hamburg to play some music, because again, I was back there, and I directed the first few minutes of a feature film in Hamburg until all the funding fell through. But that's another long story. I'd like to get back to Hamburg because I was there for about a month and I had a really great time, and I thought I'd like to come and gig in Hamburg again. I've gigged there a couple of times before, but obviously not for a long time. I'd like to get touring around France again, play a few gigs around France. I've never gigged in Ireland. I would love to come over to Ireland. So if any promoters are listening, give me a phone. I'll walk over. I'll float my guitar and paddle to come over and play. I'd love to. So yeah, that's playing as much as I can. That's my future plans. There's another album written, and I need to get in to do that. And there might be another EP coming out before the end of the year. But at the moment, I'm very keen to get playing these songs in front of people. It's been too long.
I like it. I like those plans. Am I right in saying in September you may be reuniting with some old friends?
Yes, for some unseemly punk rock. That's and I'm really looking forward to that. For the first time ever since the band kind of split up not long after that Nirvana tour. I'm playing with the surviving members of the Caterin, three of us, and Aly's playing with us as well. A kind of a set which is kind of hardcore. It won't be hardcore like the Caterin, but it will be noisy and it's sounding great. So we're playing a 4-piece. Aly's joining. Andy Milne is on drums. Murdo, who went on to be in a band called the Joyriders, who is a fantastic musician, and I absolutely love playing with Murdo. He's playing with us as well, and yeah, it's going to be really exciting. There's a few bands who we were kind of friendly with down in London at that time, and I think there's a bit of a gathering of the tribes. So that's at the Hope and Anchor in London on the Saturday, the 14th of September, and that should be a lot of fun. It'll be sweaty.
Oh man, that's going to be epic. Absolutely epic.
It really will be, because a lot of the guys down there were kind of part of that kind of pre-Nirvana scene. That there was various British bands, and once the Americans got involved, that scene got a bit kind of sort of overwhelmed. But there was there was bands like the Senseless Things, the Stupids, Mega City 4, and a lot of other bands that were in that area before Nirvana kind of kicked the doors off. So I think there's a little bit of a gathering of the tribes for that. So that'll be fun.
Right, we'll dive into the last couple of questions. So these are a couple of fun random ones, but I'm intrigued to see your answers. So besides music and animation, what are you currently obsessed with?
This will sound really sad. It's so un-rock and roll. My grandchildren.
Not bad.
But these little buggers make me laugh so much. So yeah, that's and it's all relatively new for me. And as a man that likes to talk bollocks for Scotland, there's a perfect audience.
Are they aware of Grandad's rock star alter ego?
Oh God, no. No. They are aware that there's a lot of guitars in the house, and they do like to have a bit of a strum, which is always lovely.
Perfect. They'll have a good guitar teacher when they're a bit older, so
maybe.
And the next one, it's a bit odd. If you had to spend 24 hours locked in a room with any musician from history, who would it be?
Johnny Cash.
Right.
What a man. What a life.
Yeah.
What a guy.
Yeah, Johnny Cash, that's a really good choice. Now, listen, Cam, this has been an absolutely enlightening experience now. Thanks a million.
Well, thank you. I keep saying I hate talking about myself and all these things, but then when it starts, I usually have a really nice chat with folk, and you've been an absolute pleasure to chat to. So thank you very much, and all the best to all your listeners as well. And hopefully we'll get a chance to catch up in person at some time if I manage to swim over.
The city, wipe out the stars and above. Even blinking through tears, we can still see enough. And it doesn't matter, since memories are never true. But when we fall into nothing, we'll still crash into you. We can't escape now, so we remain forever enthralled by the mist and the rain. We never noticed the trick in our hearts, sweeping us up when we'd half fallen apart. Waking up different, strangers and trials, castles and classes, used to get drunk on a mile, buying up the bargains, just cheap records and books, and mooching round side streets in our down at heel boots. We can't escape now, so we remain forever enthralled to the mist and rain. We never noticed the like to remain trapped here in the rain. It doesn't matter, nothing's ever true. We're falling faster and it's long overdue. Since we belong here, when they sprinkle their tears and wipe out our stars from the skies, we'll find our way here. We'll always be here. We can't escape now, and so we remain forever enthralled by the glistening rain. We never noticed the trick in our hearts, sweeping us up when we'd have fallen apart. We never noticed the trick in our hearts, sweeping us up when we'd have fallen apart, have fallen apart, have fallen apart.
Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. And if you're interested in signing up the Band Builder Academy, use the link in the show notes below and enter the code CONCERTS and you'll receive 10% off. So, until next time, keep rocking.
Hey, what are you guys still doing here? The show's over. It's over. You can go home. Go on. We'll see you next time. We'll be here. Bye.